Hello again. I had some time this morning, so I figured I would jump on for kind of an impromptu stream for a little bit, maybe about an hour. Perhaps longer, depending on how it's going. Thought it would also be nice to sort of jump on and talk about the period of time we're moving into right now, right? I mean, we're obviously moving into a new month, which is a new sign. Just happened, actually. And we're also moving into a new energy that we're going to be speaking about with respect to kind of where we are right now in this period, moving out of a certain energy and into something else. We just recently left the Seven of Wand energy, and we're moving into the Eight of Pentacle. And the implications of that are really good. There's some opportunities here if we approach that properly. So one of the things I'll be talking about this morning is not only sort of what is the period of time that we're moving into, what is the Eight of Pentacle, and what does that mean to you, and how we can apply that to our lives directly with some very basic knowledge without requiring some advanced study into tarot or astrology or some of these other subjects. It's a good starting point to begin to build the vocabulary and to apply it to your life today, this morning, right now, and be able to really get a good insight, sort of from a karmic level at the point that you entered this world. What was the trajectory, right? What was the vector of your experience? And then being able to apply that to the current period of time can really give you a lot of insight as to how uniquely you're going to fit into and navigate that situation. So that's one of the topics that we're going to be discussing today. Another topic that I thought would be interesting, I get this question all of the time from tarot readers, whether I'm doing training or whether I'm doing readings for readers. They always ask, how do I read time using the cards, right? A lot of the way the cards are set up, and we're initially trained to use them, is this idea of taking this symbol system and interpreting that, drawing a story from it or whatever the case may be. Everyone has their own sort of way of approaching that. So it can be difficult sometimes when the question is, when will something happen, right? And so there's some ways to go about that are a little more general, and then there's a very specific method that's highly accurate down to the day, that can be used, again, kind of without too much specific knowledge. It's kind of the idea of knowing how to tell time and knowing how the clock works. You don't need to know how the clock works to tell time. If you do want to learn the ins and outs of that, I suggest it, and obviously you'll have a much greater understanding for the source of these symbols and why they are the way they are. That it's actually much less arbitrary than one might think initially, and so we'll discuss that as well. Another topic I thought would be interesting is, it's very common, if you've done readings for a while, to receive questions related to love or to money, or to your career or your interests. And these are very important because these are really at the core of our human experience, right? We, due to the type of civilization that we have created, are dependent upon money in a lot of cases to participate in that society. And so that is a very major part of our lives. How we earn that, how we view it, how we choose to use it. All of these things are related to and affect our decisions and who we are here, the physical us, during this time that we're here. So one of the questions I typically don't get is related to pets, related to other parts of our lives. Like, for instance, what are they thinking? How do our decisions affect their life, and how they interact with us? They're affected the same as we are, and it's not always easy to see that since they don't communicate the same way. So it's really interesting to kind of get a perspective on where they're at. On the channel too, I do a reading every day related to that, and you can kind of go back if you'd like and look at some of the readings. They're typically 2 minutes in that range, and are really nice to get a broad view of kind of what's going on right now in their head. And obviously I'm available for any specific questions in your individual kind of unit there, but that's fun as well. And so to start with, the period of time that we're in right now is one of growth. It's the period of time of the Eight of Pentacle. And how this is derived is important, and I'll get there in a moment. And then you'll see here as well, I have the Major of the Hermit. Okay, so what does this all mean? Why is that the card of the day? Why is it everybody's card and not just mine? Very much like the Wheel of the Sky that we're all very familiar with. That's been separated into 12 sections, sometimes called the houses, the constellations, the sun, signs. That wheel is essentially the ancients had cut the sky up into 12 sections, and they didn't stop there. The ancients apparently had a compulsion for separating what they knew into bigger and then smaller pieces. It was a very effective means of cataloging and navigating their world, right? And the sky was very effective for that. Right, we had these two kinds of bodies in the sky. There was the light that didn't change, and then there were these other bodies that kind of seemed to move through that, right? So we have the stars that are fixed, and then we have the planets which seem to kind of move through those over time. And so they separated that into these 12 sections, and those 12 sections are the signs, right? And we can look at that in something like this, or something potentially even a little more simpler, right? And if you look to the left, you're looking east, and you'll see Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, and then the wheel of the year continues and starts over. And each one of those colors, so to speak, are a different section of time. That's a 30-degree section of time. And now they went even further, and they broke up those 30-degree sections into 10-degree sections. And so each part of the month is broke up again. And they called those the deacons. Now, the reason that term is used, it actually wasn't the term they used. We get the term deacon from the root deca, meaning 10, right? So you have the term deca for a 10-degree period, and so we get the term deacon. And those cards represent that period of time. And so it's a static system, very much like your sun sign, right? If you're born January 1st, your sign is Capricorn, and that carries with you through your life. It does not change throughout your life. Well, it's the same thing with this card. If you were born, in this particular case, on January 1st, your card would be the Three of Pentacle. And that's visible on the outside of the ring there. Now, where does that come from? Okay, so that information is actually very old. That was originally set forth a very, very long time ago. It's not really 100% clear who is responsible for that, but it was spoken about, published, taught by multiple groups throughout the ages, related to the Rosicrucian order, related to the Hermetic and esoteric arts, and was studied and written in secret, like in code, throughout the Middle Ages, and really became more mainstream. I think the first real, arguably, mainstream was the turn of the century with the Golden Dawn system and those guys, where it was more of an open system, which, if you want to be technical, they were founded, according to them, their stories, they were founded by discovering some cipher manuscript, which they decoded, and this actually led to the name and address of a woman that they communicated with, that gave them this information. So that said, it's very old, and it's based on an ancient astrological system of breaking up the signs, the planets, the elements into this cohesive system, and it's been built up over the years. And the real source, hard to argue, for this information ultimately comes from the Tree of Life. The idea here being that the Tree of Life is ultimately a pictorial representation of the universe, and the tarot is a pictorial representation of the Tree of Life, and this is the whole of human experience in one symbol. And so it nice and neatly kind of packs into this vocabulary that's been developed over the years that we call astrology and tarot. So what do we do with this information? Well, most of us, thankfully, just through the zeitgeist and through interactions in our lives, are at least cursorily familiar with the sun sign system, right? This person's an Aries, this person's a Leo, this person's a Sagittarius, and what does that mean? The Pisces are always crying, and the Leo is proud, and the Aries is the ego. All these things. There's these basic archetypes, but what it is doing is developing this vocabulary that gets more accurate over time, and it gets a little more advanced over time, just like a child can use small words and has a basic understanding of what those words mean. And as you mature into adulthood, and you understand the nuances that's built into those words. This is the exact same thing with this system, right? So if we look here again, for the sake of the period of time that we're in right now, we just moved into this period of Virgo a couple days ago on the 23rd, and then we're also moved from the Seven of Wand energy into the Eight of Pentacle, which is currently ruled by the Sun. And within the next couple of days, September 2nd, we're going to be moving into the Nine of Pentacle and into the planetary energy of Venus. So some changes are about to happen, and this is obviously very normal. We go through these changes frequently. And one of the best ways for you to kind of look at your individual circumstance is to apply that card, in this case the Eight of Pentacle, the period we're in now, with your birth card. Right? And so what we can do is take this information and develop a very quick little mini horoscope for ourselves, right? And there's it's a very effective tool for somebody who even has just a basic knowledge to use that, right? And this is something that I offer to anybody who participates in my live stream. I do a free personal message using this technique to get to the heart of where you are right now, what's going on within the transitional period. Where are you? Are you getting closer to reaching this next phase, or are you at the beginning of this transition? What to expect during that period? And then we'll see the Hermit, right? Now, what is this card compared to this Eight of Pentacle? What is this major arcana card refer to? Well, this refers to the actual sign itself. So we just moved out of Leo, which was strength in the tarot, and we're moving into Virgo, which is the Hermit. Okay, and so when you see that major card, what that's referring to is basically the sun sign of that period of time is reflected in 12 of the major arcana. There's 7 of them that represent the planets, 3 that represent the elements, and then the 12 signs. The Hermit is one of the 12 signs. Okay, and so when you consider the period of time that we're moving into right now, from Leo into Virgo, from fixed to mutable, as far as the elements that we're moving into as well, we're moving in from fire to earth. Very, very different circumstance. And now, one of the advantages of this period of time is that it really gives us an opportunity to step back and to let this be a period of growth. And that growth, this isn't this kind of generic growth. This isn't the kind of growth of you've done some work and so now you get to see the fruition of that. This is actually like a karmic jumpstart. Basically, you've done the work. You've done it correctly. You put your heart into it, and you're not rushing. You're respecting it, and that got noticed. People respect the work that you do, and you become popular because of that. Like you develop a reputation, and because of that, you get busy. Now is the choice. What do you do now? Do you grow or die, right? Do you allow the work to suffer because you're getting rushed to try to get the orders out, and so you're not putting out the same work you used to? Or are you going to hold steadfast and maintain the integrity of the work despite the fact that you got busy by doing what you need to grow? And what does that mean? That means maybe hiring. That means maybe altering the processes that you have internally for doing the work so that they're more efficient and you can get more done. Maybe stepping out of your comfort zone on some of that, the way that you do it, to maybe make it more efficient. There's a lot of ways that you can foster and allow for that growth while not allowing the work to suffer, and that's an important point during this period of time. This period of time is going to be a kind of make or break with respect to your reputation when you come out of this circumstance. Will you come out with people going, sharing and having respect for what you do, or they're going to be disappointed, or are they going to be, have a lackluster response? It's up to you. You know people like what you do. Your job is to not break that, right? Like keep that, in spite of the fact that you're growing and you may be a little uncomfortable with, Now, during this time with the Hermit is also this idea of truth. And what does that mean? So if you look at the Hermit here, there's a couple of implications. First of all, the sky was painted darker on purpose, because only in darkness can the truth be seen. But also there's the idea that the light, that the lantern he's holding, is a very special kind of lamp. It only shines on the truth. But it can only do so in darkness. Like, imagine if you had this lantern in the sunlight. You would not be able to see the light of the lantern. You would see everything, and so you would be, like we are in most of our existence, forced to suffer the decision of what am I looking at? Is it real or fake or whatever the case? And that's what we do. We get it right some of the time. Most of the time we don't. Most of the time we're just sucked into the illusion and we just go with that. And it causes disease and anxiety and all these things. Or we can kind of take a step back and go, okay, what's going on here? What's the truth of the situation? How does it ring to my soul? Forget about my mind, the mind is weak. The heart knows the truth. So what the idea of the Hermit is to do the work of going into the darkness, i.e. yourself. and trying to strip away what it is that we pretend to be for other people, pretend to be for the world, pretend to be for ourselves, to justify our behaviors or the things we're uncomfortable about. And in that darkness, those things are invisible. They don't exist any longer. And then when that light ignites and it shines on the truth, what it actually shines on is a mirror in which you can see yourself. And you can take the moment and deny it. Very often we do. But you can also take the moment to study it and to love it and to recognize it and to accept it. Because that's the beginning of self. That's when you become you for the first time. Instead of a reflection, you become a light yourself, right? Right now, we can see you because you're giving off light. It's bouncing off, and so you're reflecting the light of the world, and we see that reflection, and so the world reacts to you in that way. But when you complete this process, you stop reflecting and you start casting your own. And now what's cool about that is that when you do that, you draw attention, right? If you're in a darkness and a light's turned on, you're going to turn toward that light, and so does everyone else. And so when you begin to give off your own light, you will attract different people in your life. The kinds of relationships that you build up, in whether it's business, friends, or personal, are more fulfilling and satisfying, more true. You're more satisfying for them, and it's a much better circumstance for everybody that you have an equal desire to know and to cultivate the other person's individuality. That's so rare, but cannot happen until you discover yourself. Only then can you even know what it is that you are and can reflect, or can rather cast into the world. So that has to happen first. And now's the time to do that, because the karmic trajectory that we're in right now is conducive to that. So if you chose to do that work, you would be assisted by the momentum of the universe right now. It's now's the time to do that work, and at the same time, it's the time to decide to grow or to allow the work to suffer. Obviously growing is what we're here to do. It's why you were created. So, and I don't mean that in some way of like you were created to be big and make money. That's not what I mean. But you were certainly created to, on the other end of this trip, have gained experience and have become better for it. A particle of light zooming through the universe bounces off of a star and it turns red, and it bounces off of a planet and it turns blue, and eventually it gets to our eye in a certain form. It's the same idea. And so what we would do is we would take everything I just talked about, which is that is the foundation, that is the skeleton of the circumstance that we're in right now, and we would build on top of that with your birth card, right? So we go to the wheel, or there's various charts, books. A great book is actually Lon Milo Duquette's. Lon Milo Duquette wrote a couple of books related to the tarot, the Thoth system. But there's a lot of good charts in there, but there's so many books that have these charts. I like the wheel because it's in one spot at a glance with color. It's quick to jump. And then there's a second wheel, which is the one I do for what I'm actually working. There's a little bit more information on here. It's the same wheel as this, just with more information. But so if we look here as an example to my particular birth card, it happens to be the 10 of Wands. I'm born in the middle to the end of December. And so that's the sun sign of Sagittarius, right? We have the element of fire. I'm in the period of time ruled by the planet of Saturn. Although Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, and that does not change, right? And you'll see that in this wheel, Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, but the planet that is in influence at the time of that deacon's period is Saturn, okay? And also the Ten of Wands, right? So what we do in this situation then is what we would take a look at the Ten of Wands, the Hermit, and then the Eight of Pentacle. And so what we're looking at here is an example of a horoscope, of a personal, and that's not really even an accurate word, the word horoscope, because that refers to a specific comparison between your natal chart and the transit. It's not, that's a very specific astrological term. This is a personal message related to the deacon of the current period that also considers the influence of the major of the time as well. This is a technique I've developed over years. I'm sure I'm not the only person that uses something similar to this. Clearly, people use deacons in tarot readings. That's not unique to me. This process, though, of using your birth card with the deacon and the major of the time is one that I've just developed over time. It's not one I was particularly taught, but it's effective. And I have taught this to others that have used it effectively for themselves. You could also, for instance, instead of the birth card, use the date of a love interest's birthday. Use the date of a job interview. Use the date of a future event to get a sense of how these interact. And so there's a lot of different ways. Hello, MS. Thanks for popping in on the stream. And so by using this technique of locating the card of the day, or the deacon relevant on the wheel, and applying that to your birth card, we have this circumstance where we can get a really good granular look at where you are in the situation compared to everybody else. And so MS, an example, if you'd like to participate, anyone who joins the stream is entitled to a free personal message. So what I would do is find your birth card and apply that to the card of the period of time that we're in right now, which is the Eight of Pentacle and the Hermit, and then that would give me the information that would allow like a personal message. And so all I would need to do that would be your month and day. Don't need the year, but the month and the day of your birth, and that will let me find that card here. So if we pop up the wheel as an example, if you look at the outer ring of the wheel, you'll see the tarot symbols with the numbers, and then the next inner wheel are the dates. If you find your birthday on there, and that will tell you the corresponding card for your birthday, okay? And that card doesn't change. It's kind of like your sun sign. It carries throughout your life, right? So if you were born, for instance, in middle to end of December, you're Sagittarius, you're going to be a Sagittarius your whole life. Well, the card of your day is the same thing. Or your birth card. It carries with you. It stays with you. And so we can apply that to the current circumstance, in this case, the Hermit and the Eight of Pentacle. So as an example here, the Ten of Wands is my birth card. And what the Ten of Wands refers to is a few different ideas, but the first major idea is carrying this weight, right? And then that is, it's willful. This person is not being forced to carry these sticks, but they do feel obligated in some way to do so. And there's this sense of taking on the weight of others. And there's a warning of burning out, like of going too far to the point where you physically are burnt out, or also the idea of not feeling reciprocated, and that the act turns from giving into resentment. And that's a warning for the Ten of Wands. There's obviously esoteric meaning as well, which is deeper than that, out of the scope of this reading. But and then the Hermit again refers to the fact that only in darkness can the truth be seen, and that lantern that shines on the truth is drowned out in the sunlight, right? And so it's a work of going alone to recognize that. And so what I see in this particular circumstance with the Ten of Wands is the idea that the work has begun to feel unequal, and resentment is beginning, and it's very important that I reevaluate why I'm doing it, because the why is what determines our expectation, right? Like why we're doing something tells us in our hearts whether or not we feel like we deserve something in return, or that others should recognize the work, right? Are we doing it anonymously for the sake of the work, or are we doing it to be recognized? Are we doing it altruistically, which is mostly possible, but not really for humans? Like, are we doing it for nothing in return? Or are we doing it, if we're honest, because we want to be noticed for doing good things, and whatever the case may be, right? So, and then finally, not letting the work suffer is a biggie. If you constantly put yourself out there, like the Ten of Wands here is showing, each wand is a different favor that you're doing for somebody. It gets heavy, and you're like, man, I want everyone to like me, and I'm going to keep doing what I can to make sure everybody likes me. But eventually, you just physically can't carry any more sticks, right? So the work will suffer. So even though you've become popular in the Eight of Pentacles, you're getting busy, people like what you're doing, there's going to be a point I can't carry it anymore, and then I'm going to start to fail. Personally, I'll fail. Because it turns out you don't need to constantly do for people for them to like you, or to be loved, or to be respected. Do the work. Do it right. Do it in the way that you can, and people will continue to notice that. They'll feel lucky and fortunate that they were able to participate in that, rather than you feeling like you have to constantly win it back. You don't. You are loved. You are respected. And when you do the right work, people notice. When you don't, they notice too. But when you do, they notice, and you are respected for that. Okay. So that's the idea for this type of reading, and that goes into the idea of the period of time we're entering right now, which is the Hermit energy, and specifically the Deacon related to growth and not allowing the work to suffer during that period of growth, and the Daily card, like how to find your birth card. You'll notice as well that the next period of time we're moving into is the Nine of Pentacles, but we're staying in the Virgo energy. We're moving from the Sun into Venus. One of the advantages of that is that we have this energy that's on us. And as we move into this Venus energy, there's going to be this opportunity for us to share this with others and to grow together, right? There's going to be a relationship that takes place, whether that's in business, personal, community, subculture. Those connections are very important and can help us to grow, or just help us to be the one that helps them grow. We're not responsible for the why. The why is too big of a question. We're responsible for the what. We're the doer. Right, so we're the ones that are executing the will of the universe, while being tricked by our egos into thinking that we're the ones doing it. It's really a classic dance. And there are times, however, that you can step outside of that and to not be ruled by the ego. And during those small periods, because they're short, the ego is actually necessary, unfortunately, for interfacing with 3D reality when it comes to other people. And our own experience. What does the ego do? It gives us the confidence to say, no, I can climb that tree to get that fruit. Or it says, I can jump over this pond instead of walking, or over this river instead of walking, miles around it. Like, it is necessary from that degree. It's just, if we completely identify and lose ourselves, then we're not really accomplishing growth at all. So, good time to sort of say, okay, well, who am I really? What do I really want? And how can I benefit from that in a way that is consistent with my true will, right? That's a biggie. As well, the daily message for today is one that, and actually sort of let's jump to that. The daily message for today is, this is for everyone as well. Growth and change happens in a lot of different ways. It's really great when it's willing. When we set out to learn something or to do something or to and then we succeed at that, that's fun growth. An example is like learning how to play an instrument or a new skill, or kind of like, one example is in close to 40 years of studying the tarot, I was very adamant about not using certain types of cards for various reasons. If it had the word oracle in front of it, I wouldn't even touch it, because I was some kind of like intellectual elitist, that stuck to the strictness of the doctrine of tarot, right? And so if the symbols weren't right, or it wasn't in the right color scale, it wasn't correct, and got to get past that. It's and it did. It took me a while to get past it. And I recently began using certain types of oracle that I'm having very much success with. And really wish I would have just gotten over and done earlier in life. And though anytime we bump into those circumstances, we have to pay attention to them, because those are the ones that tell us, where we might have missed some opportunities, and so we can hopefully not do that in the future, right? Whenever we can, obviously. So that said, let's jump over here. There's a couple of messages here that are fun. The pet message, I think, is a very important one for today. The idea of the pet message today is there is a something planned in the near future, like a vacation or some type of travel, and it's during that time that you're going to have to maybe get either a babysitter for the pets, or you're going to have to board them somewhere, or you're going to drop them off somewhere, like whatever your circumstance. Everybody's a little different how they handle that. Be careful, because I see that there's a person that seems like they're sort of enthusiastic about helping them, but it doesn't look like it's going to really be what you're thinking. And there may even be some type of like maliciousness almost. And that be careful when trying to interpret this Ten of Swords. The Ten of Swords is a scary looking card, right? And so it does not, 99% of the time, does not represent this kind of violent act. What it really represents is sort of a failure of intellect and the result of that, right? Like ignoring certain things, or each time we know the truth but look the other way, or that we justify falsehood, it puts us closer to losing agency, losing control of our thought and our mind and our heart, and ultimately it pauses your development spiritually. So, but the lesson here basically is that this person does not have the best interest of your pet in mind. And if we look at the wheel, we have here the Three of Sword, and we have the Three of Wand. Okay, now let's look at the wheel, and let's find a Three of Sword. Okay, now the Three of Swords, you're going to notice, is to the far right in Libra. And if you see the Three of Wand, it is literally exactly opposite that, in the middle of Aries. So in the middle of Libra, Three of Sword; in the middle of Aries, Three of Wand. These are polar opposites, energetically. Earth and fire. Now you may think water and fire, but the important thing here is the idea that Earth contains fire, but fire can also consume it. So it's not just that they're opposites, because water and fire aren't actually opposites. They're two sides of the same coin. That's a different thing. So similar to like hate is not the opposite of love. Indifference is the opposite of love. Hate and love are just two sides of the same coin. They're not opposites. It's the same idea with this. So what we have with this energy here is outwardly enthusiasm, but inwardly disdain. And also the first card too, a lot of people consider this as the broken heart card. I understand why you see that. However, when this card was developed, it was actually the mid 1400s, and it was on a deck called the Solabusca. The Solabusca was a very old deck. Actually, I think that was the 1480s. The Solabusca was a deck that was the first mainstream deck that actually pictorially represented the pips. So that's a fancy word for the number cards. And up until then, they were just like playing cards. The coins, if the 7 of coin would have 7 coins on a card, or 6 or 5, and they were just lined up. There was some rhyme or reason with some of the decoration of the vines and some things, but there was no scene. Here we see a person standing holding the thing. We have somebody on the ground with the swords. We have the heart with the swords. This representation did not really exist until the Solabusca. And even that, it was a more basic kind of propaganda of using individuals of the time in a very idiosyncratic, almost comical way. It was like an insult / honor to be put in these cards of the time. But one of those cards had, and it wasn't the swords, it was the wand, but has these 3 stuck in the heart, and that image has carried over. We think maybe that Pamela Coleman Smith, who was the artist in this deck, saw the Solabusca in a museum and was inspired. There's a couple of cards directly out of Solabusca that she drew. In this case, though, they switched it to the sword. And there's another card that is similar that was switched to also the sword, which is the 7, the person carrying away the swords like they're stealing them. But that said, this card is very often misrepresented as this broken heart kind of card, and it doesn't really mean that. What it means is sadness and sorrow and loss. But more specific, it's the loss of something that you can't get back, like something's changed and you're mourning the old way. You learn something and you can't unlearn it. And there's a loss that comes from that. A loss of innocence, a loss of identity. If it's something that you thought was, like a great example is to maybe learn that somebody that you loved as a child, as a celebrity, turns out to be like a supremely bad person. That can really just mess with you. Or if you learned, something about your religion that you didn't know, and it changes your perspective on that. A great example of that is and this happened to me personally recently, somebody I was very close to, actually, in my local community. I discovered directly, not through, other people. I discovered it directly. It was a very racist, bigoted, sort of malicious person. I had no idea, and I just could not accept that. And that loss was really powerful, and it kind of changed me a little bit. That's what this card represents. This card represents this. It's not just sad because bad things happen and that makes us sad. Of course it does. But this is deeper than that. What this refers to is the what you're mourning is the way of thinking, is the worldview that is changed, that can't go back. And so with this, the way this all interpreted for the pet was, this person, it's going to change how you view them. And you may wake up to the fact that they've kind of been like this all along, and you saw past it because you were friends, or maybe because they have a professional reputation, but you kind of had a feeling, and so now that reputation will be tarnished with you forever. My goal is hopefully for you to discover that before it turns into there being, a problem with your pet, like an injury or psychological damage through, even just verbal abuse when you're not around. That would not be good, man. If I found out somebody was being mean to my dogs when I wasn't around, I would be upset, and I would have to act on that. So that said, look out for that. That's a big deal. And vetting somebody to take care of your animals isn't always easy, and so I don't know, it's always good to go with, the crazy cat lady, or somebody that, I had a vet in Florida years and years and years ago. I believe his name was Dr. Butzer. He was really weird. He was the kind of guy that, like, you thought about, like, is he a serial killer? And it turns out he's not. He's just, all he cares about are animals. He was so into like, you would walk in the door, he wouldn't even look at you. He would look at the dog. He wouldn't even acknowledge you. He would just get down right into their face, love them up, and just, and have a moment before then he would look at you, hey, what's up? Why are you here? And then we'd go in the office and whatever. He was very friendly. Don't get me wrong. But it's like you didn't exist. It was just, and that was my kind of vet. I 100% felt like this guy would walk through the fire for my animal, So it's usually good to go for those types of people, right? But if you have any concern before you go on this vacation about who this should be, call or leave a voicemail or a text message at this number right here, okay? And I will be able to throw some quick cards and give you some guidance on who to or not to choose for the situation. And together we can maybe shed a perspective on who this might be in your particular circumstance, and correct that. Okay. We have an obligation to our animals. It's very important. Now, the birthday message I have on the channel as a separate static video, and so you can go ahead and watch that if you'd like, if your birthday happens to be the 30th. Interesting one. What we're talking about here is basically the idea of public discourse, and sort of like the term I used in the description for the video was fighting City Hall, right? It's this idea of speaking against the status quo or the institution, right? Like the foundation of our kind of like zeitgeist, and which is good because we have, not only do we have the platform for it now, like pick a platform and there's an audience, but there's also a necessity, and there's an energy of people wanting this, like it's which is really cool. It's almost like a resurgence of what had occurred in the 60s, but on steroids, right? We have everybody is brave. Everybody has this platform where you can hide behind the screen but be heard and seen by a lot of people, and that difference is allowing for a very volatile time, but it's also an important one because during this chaos, a lot of the stuff that is not sustainable is going to die off, and what we're going to be left with at the end of this, when the dust clears, is truth and a much more solid understanding of what's right and wrong, what we accept and don't, and can, as a group, hopefully come out the proper way. But part of this is going to require certain people with gumption, with courage, with that fire in their belly to be the one to speak, and to speak to power, which is super hard. It's real easy in your echo chamber, but when you're face to face with somebody that disagrees with you and they're bigger, that's when you find out who you are. But you got this, and you know it, and you know it's time. So it was a cool message, and it's a little more drawn out in the video, so take a look at that as well. The mind, body, soul, that's one that I kind of wanted to save for a more personal reading, so I'm going to save that one and do it live with an individual. And so we'll talk about that perhaps in a little bit or later on today. I'm going to be doing another stream later today. I've got some stuff going on this afternoon. And then when I'm back, I'm going to jump back on for at least another couple hours. And then I'll do my overnight later tonight. So let's discuss in the meantime, while we're either waiting for the stream to build up or I continue to just sort of speak to the empty room and have this as a static video discussing the card of the day and the process and so forth. I like this deck for this topic. The thing we're going to be talking about here is how to read specific dates, right? Like when you get the question about how do I use the tarot to find dates, this is how you do it. And I'm not sure if I set it up. Yes, I did. Okay, good. So the way that we go about this is understanding the genetic connection between astrology and tarot, and that they are actually both a shared expression of the same knowledge. It's the same information using a different vocabulary, right? And thankfully, the vocabulary of astrology, at least from the basics, the sun sign, the moon sign, your rising, your natal chart. I'm not talking about, because astrology is far more granular and complex and exact than most people know. Right? Unless you're a practitioner that actually has gone through the steps of pulling out an ephemeris and doing your own chart, you have no idea. But if you do take that step, it's a beautiful, powerful language that allows access to some serious knowledge that you can't get otherwise. And so I would highly recommend it to anyone that has the desire. You owe it to yourself to take the step to learn it. But if you don't, we know what Leo means, right? We know that Leo's a lion, and we understand what the idea of a lion is from respect of the strength and proudness and, courage. Nope. Lions aren't courageous. Why did I say that? Well, because courage is acting in spite of fear. Lions are fearless. They don't need courage. It doesn't even come up in their existence. So it's more of a fearlessness. Anyway, but that also leads to a very no necessity for extrovert. If you'll notice, lions are calm. They walk with a cool. Like they're not trying to impress you. That's Aries. Aries is trying to impress you. Leo couldn't care less. Right? They used to joke, you're nobody till you've been ignored by a cat. Well, imagine a cat that knows he's big and bad, right? That's a lion. So, but what does that have to do with time? Well, we understand Leo. And we know that Leo represents a certain period of time, don't we? Leo represents the period of time between July 22nd and August 22nd. That period of time is ruled by various symbol systems, right? Leo is also the element of fire. Leo is also the element of again, not courage, but fearlessness. And so if you're looking at that period of time from the respect of the major, you would apply the qualities of the sun sign. But you could also apply the qualities of the element, in this case fire. And now if you wanted to get more granular about the time is when we would look to the small cards. Okay, and what the small cards are basically the not the aces, but the 2s through the 10. Right, so there's various cards in the tarot. There's basically 4 types of card. Oftentimes you'll hear that there's 2, right? You have the major and the minor arcana. The majors are these cards like Strength and the Wheel of Fortune and the Fool, and these. There's 22 of them, and they're numbered. They don't have suits, and they're numbered on top 0 to 21. And then we have the number cards, kind of like the playing cards that we're used to today, right? You have the ace through king, ace, 2, 3, 4, so on, jack, queen, king, ace. Well, in the tarot, it's similar to that, only you have the ace. You have 2 through 10, and then you have page, knight, queen, and king. There's 4 courts. Or, depending upon the system, if you're using the Thoth system, it's the princess, the prince, which is the knight, the queen, and then the knight, which is the king. And the idea in the Crowley system and Thoth is the idea that they're actually all in transitionary phases. So the king doesn't exist yet. The king is in the form of the knight who will become the king. The princess is in a transient form that will mate with the knight who becomes the king and give birth to the next princess. So, and we'll talk about that in a different lesson. There's some very deep esoteric astrological knowledge there. But suffice it to say that these cards are all different. The major is different from the ace, and all the aces are a separate kind of type of card. Then there are the court cards, the knight, the queen, the king, so on. And then there are the number card, the small cards, in this case the 7 of wand, right? So when you're looking at a specific small chunk period of time, we use the decan for that, which is the 10-degree period, and that's represented by the small cards. And so somebody says, when's something going to happen? This is how you answer that question. You'd go through your process, whether that's shuffling, right? Whether that's washing the cards all around and picking one randomly. I know some people will go through the thing where they just kind of shuffle these real fast until one throat pops out, and they'll go with that. They're all equally effective. It's whatever works for you. And the idea here is to essentially draw a card based on their question of when. Okay? And so here's an example. And what we have here is the Prince of Sword. The Prince of Sword refers to the what would be called the knight in the Rider-Waite system, the Knight of Sword. Okay, and now what do we know about the Knight of Sword? Well, we know some information here. First of all, we know if we find the Knight of Sword on the wheel, this larger wheel contains the court cards. And so if you notice on the bottom here, the Knight of Sword, under where Venus and Mercury, it begins in the period of Venus, okay? It begins in the period of the 7 of Discs and then ends in the period of the 9 of Sword, that 30-degree period of time. So what that says is May 11th to June 1st, like in that period, that 2-week roughly period, up and until June 10th, actually. So you could say within that month. But the period of time, this would basically mean late spring, early summer. And so an individual that asks the question of when, that gets the Prince of Sword, is going to be, and it's actually, these cards are great because it just puts it right there on that. Right? The period of time of this Prince of Sword is January 10th to February 8th, and if we jump to the wheel, we'll see the Prince of Sword. Top left. And January 10th. And where does it end? 30 degrees later. The 6 of Sword. In that period of time. February 8th. Okay. And so now you can ask yourself during these questions, like, okay, so we asked for a date, and the tarot gave us a 30-degree period of time, right? Basically a month, roughly. One moon. Now, what this also shows us, and this is important from the respect of the energy of that time as well. This is 20 degree Capricorn moving into 20 degree Aquarius. And, you know, we know Capricorn, right? Capricorn is very sort of type A. Here's Capricorn. Okay, wait, hang on. Let me just get that even. Okay, all right. Okay. Hang on, right there. Perfect. Great. Okay, hang on. Let me get my ruler. Okay, right. So that's Capricorn. And that's what we're talking about here. But then we're moving into Aquarius. All right, Aquarius is a little bit different than Capricorn, right? So Aquarius, we're going to see something along the lines of, oh my gosh, what is going to happen? Oh, geez, look at all the energy. Okay, oh, all right, guys, well, right? So it's totally different vibe. And, you know, the idea there is that moving through these periods of time gives us an idea that this person came in emotionally stable and left sort of like, a little frazzled. And the sword represents intellect. So this is a mental activity. Now we go to the next idea of the aces. The aces are much broader. These are seasonal. So this is sort of like a bigger period of time. This is by you're cutting this wheel in quarters. All right, let's even go to the smaller wheel here. All right, so 3 colors. The aces represent 3 colors, basically all of the elements of that color. So for instance, the Ace of Wand represents all of the fire signs, right? So we're going to be looking at Aries, we're going to be looking at Leo, we're going to be looking at Sagittarius. And so the Ace of Wand represents all 3 of those cards and appears at 3 different times of the year. What this tells us is, rather than the specific time of the year, it represents the idea of the fact that it's a spiritual act as opposed to a mental one or an emotional one, right? Because elementally what we're talking about here is mind, body, spirit, right? And so mind is the sword, body is earth, the cup is the heart, is emotion, feelings, and then fire, the wand, is spirit, the spark that gives this thing life, right? The thing that allows us to move. Earth is the body, and water is the blood, and sword is the mind. My puppy is moving the camera. Then the wand is the animating force, the life force, the fire, right? And so elementally, it tells us that this is a period of activity. Hello. Absolutely, sure thing. All I would require would be your month and day of birth. Don't need the year, but the month and day of birth, and we will find your birth card, and I'll be able to do that for you. And so based on the month and day of your birth, this will allow me to find your birth card. What I do with that is that I apply that to the card of the period of time that we're in right now, and that will allow me to give you your personal message. And so you'll see here on this wheel, on the outer edge of the wheel, we have the cards, and on the next inner wheel is the dates. And so we just need to find your birthday within this wheel, and then that will allow me to find your birth card. Okay, January 20th. So we'll see January 20th, you're in the 5 of Swords. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate you saying that. And that puts you in Aquarius. I'm in your sun sign Aquarius. First day, so January 20th, you're right there between Capricorn and Aquarius on the cusp. But that puts you as the 5 of Swords. So let me just plug this in here. Give me just a moment. Alrighty. Okay. So what we have, let me pop your birth card out. And you'll have to pardon I have a puppy. And she's shaking my camera. Boom. Let me grab her real quick. Sorry. Come here, honey. There you go. Okay. Alrighty. That's better. Okay, so we are looking at, all right, that is going to require, for me to get the actual literal spot, I would have to pop open my ephemeris software and find literally what degree you're on. Oh, no problem. Don't worry about the spelling. Aren't we kind of past that in chats, right? Like, we all know we're trying to go fast. Yeah, she's sweet. She's a long-haired dachshund. She's only about 7 months old. Just a beautiful little girl. But here, let me get your card up there. This is the 5 of Swords. Okay. So, let's first talk about your birth card, right? Your birth card is the 5 of Swords. This does not change throughout your life. Okay, this is with you just like your sun sign, right? And if we go back to the wheel here, we'll see again, your date is the first day of Aquarius. Now, depending upon some factors, where you were born and the time, that's going to tell us exactly where you were as far as the sun. Were you leaning kind of a little bit more toward Capricorn Aquarius? I can answer that, but just not now. But specifically, the energy is also you've moved out of the sun in Capricorn and into Venus in Aquarius, which is a very emotionally powerful state. However, it also lends to there being a possibility of maybe some tension. And where I see that, the 5 of Swords means a few things here. If you look at what's happening in this little scene, you've got this person in the front holding the swords, and they have this smirk on their face. They're a bully. They're a thief. What they've done is they've convinced these other people to do work. And they all together did this work. Oh, did it? Okay, are we back? Yeah, I don't know. Google's saying I'm okay on the send, so looks like the stream is doing all right. But so this person in the front convinced this group to do a bunch of work, and he's the only one that benefited, the one in the front. Now, the one in the middle is going to console the one in the back that's upset about this fact. And so what this represents is the idea of somebody either doing more work while others benefit, or somebody who is the one that is the bully, the one that is kind of benefiting off of your work, and you kind of receiving nothing for that. Now let's look at the implication of that. Oh, no problem. And keep in mind, I'm going to keep this stream up so you can go back and view this video. So you can watch it at your leisure and at your speed. You can rewind and whatever the case. So the 5 of Swords is this idea of who are you in this circumstance? Are you the one being taken? Yeah, well, tell you what, shoot me an email so I have your email address, and I'll run a quick natal. So in the email, put your, just like you did in the chat here, Put your birthday, the time and date, and also very important, can't do it without this, where you were born, like the actual place. If you can't give me the hospital or the place, at least give me the city, and that will work. But more accurate would be if you can give me the actual spot, if you know the spot you were born in. Like if you were born at your grandma's house, if you know, tell me on Google Earth, and then, because what that'll let me do is get the most accurate rising sign, and the most accurate position for the moon. These two things move super fast. And so the moon, if you've ever tried to look at the moon through a telescope, it moves through your field, like through your telescope. And so minute to minute that changes. But so I'll be able to certainly do that. And I'll be able to finally tell you, do you read Capricorn or do you read Aquarius, right? But specifically in this case, though, this idea of the... you should go back there. Okay. This idea of doing work and somebody else benefiting, you have to understand the why, right? The Hermit is the period of time we're in right now, which means that work cannot be done in light. It has to be done in darkness and alone. Like, you have to look internally and see, what is it about me that either allows me to become a victim of that, or that drives me to do that to people. Okay, I'm sorry. Give me just a moment. She's going to pull the cord out, and I am sorry. I'll be right back. Yeah, sorry about that. She was kind of getting tangled in a cable, and it was getting, she was shaking the cameras and stuff, so sorry about that. So yeah, if you email me, I'll be able to get the exact information that I need so we can know right away, here's the degrees you are off, and I can give you down to the minutes and seconds, so we'll get that right. Here, we're looking at the Eight of Pentacle, and this is the important part of the message for you. This refers to the work being done. And in fact, here's the biggie. The work is good. The thing that you do, people like. And in fact, it got to the point that you kind of have a reputation for the thing that you do. And more people want it. And so you become, at least within this circumstance, there's a popularity that develops. There's an interest in what you're doing. You begin to be seen for it. But the problem is that there's a warning that the work suffer for the fact that there's a you're being forced to kind of rush through it, or that, again, this other person's benefiting, so you're getting busy and they're stacking you with work, and they don't care that you're getting stressed because they're making money, and the more that they do, the better. It's that idea, not necessarily that specific circumstance, but that idea that you're being put in a position of pressure to create while someone else benefits, and it's affecting the work. What you need to do is to step back, take agency, and say, wait a minute, I'm the one doing it. I'm what people like. I'm going to do my thing my way, and not allow the integrity of the work to suffer for financial benefit or gain, or for the gain of somebody else. Now, what's also important in respect to the 5 here, it's a mental game. This person's playing with your mind. They're not physically taking the swords from you. That would be a different act. This is a mental act. They're convincing you that you should do it. And you could easily be convinced by yourself that that's not good. Okay? And so, specifics, if you wanted to get into very granular specifics, I could easily do a more advanced reading for you. Actually, now I'm not able. I have to leave in about 5 minutes. But if you'd like to, I'll be on a live stream later, or we can connect and do a personal reading later. As far as your question when you popped in, what was the name? Let me see that. Charmin. Going to use a different deck for that. And since I'm going to be ending the stream here soon, you'll be the last reading. And so I will go ahead and count this as the last reading, and I'm going to use a different deck for that. So just here's a little gift. This is a reading that I typically charge about $5 for. But it was a slow stream, and I'm about to go, so why not? Okay, so this is a very specific deck that I use for relationship type readings. It's called the Oracle of the Radiant Sun, and it's also astrology based, which I like, but it's not tarot. However, again, the genetic connection between tarot and astrology is inarguable. So what I'm going to do is, we're putting out 5 cards. The 5 cards I'm putting out are going to be related to you, them, and how it affects your mind, body, and soul. So we're going to kind of look at the 3 different sections, and then the 2 of you individually, and how you are looking at this particular circumstance from an emotional and a spiritual perspective. Okay. So, you. Them. How it's going to affect and how your mind affects the situation. Body. How it's going to affect and how your body is going to affect the situation. Soul. Okay. You are the sun in Aquarius. Now, this doesn't represent your sun sign, right? That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is within the context of the connection with this person, what's your actual motivation? Where do you stand? Sun in Aquarius. The card comes up as idealism, right? And what this refers to is you want this thing that you think is, like, what is your version of the ideal? What you want is not always necessarily attainable, but we kind of create it for ourselves sometimes, don't we? Like, we'll look at a circumstance or a person or something that's occurring in our lives, and we will justify it. Even if there's like a negativity, we will somehow wind up justifying that and making it something. We'll ignore behavior. There's a lot of things that we do there. And that's okay. And if you see the symbol on the bottom here too as well, it's right we know who that is with the blue skin, right? And we have this scene here as well. There's a lot of almost like fantasy, but that's not the right word, but the ideal, like you see it for greater than it is. You want something great. Now here is Mars in Leo. Mars in Leo is, I love the image, right? That is the image of a rooster, right? It's the Modigliani kind of with the face. That was an artist. Modigliani was a painter. Okay, well, what I see here is actually quite different than that. In this connection here, you are seeing them for something greater than they are, and they are in a state of they're in a state of egotism. They know you want them, and they're acting on that, puffing up their chest, right? Emotionally. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing, and we're going to get there, right? But there is a sense of falseness. Like, you're not seeing the real person. You're seeing what they think you want to see. But here's why that's good, okay? The reason I think it's good is because they want to impress you. If they didn't, they wouldn't puff their chest up. They would just be who they are. No, but they care about how you see them, right? Like, and so if they care about how you see them, there's a reason. And usually it's because they want something from you. They're attracted, or they wanted it, they want you to look at them favorably. Now let's look at the situation here with respect to the mind. We have the moon in Libra. And this is a very good card with respect to how the two of you interact mentally. This is the card of mental. Good conversation. You can agree to disagree, but get along, at least to have the discussion when you do disagree. There can be playful banter, but at the end of the day, you kind of do well. I appreciate that. Thank you. I've been reading for 40 years. I take it very seriously. And if I don't feel it, I'll abandon the reading. So thank you so much for saying that. But so mentally, there's a good connection here. You two can have stuff to talk about. That matters, because if it's just physical, what do you do then? What do you do after? Like what? Or if you don't have anything to interest outside of each other, that doesn't last. Okay, let's look at the body. We have Mercury and Gemini. This is really cool. The term they use is excitement. That's not a bad word. But let's look at what the actual energy is here. Mercury is a card of science, math, art, music. It's the emotional expression of mental objects. Meaning you take science and you apply emotion and you get music. You take geometry and you apply the heart and you get art, paintings, right? There's something to that idea. And what this refers to is that physical connection. Physically, you two will be in a position of there being a playfulness related to taking your mental energy and transmuting that into something creative. So that's a great sign physically. As well as there being, when you allow and are open to it, a level of intensity that can be very good for the connection. Now, spiritually is an interesting card, okay? Because it's what we have here, and this is you. Spiritually, what we have here is somebody who is in a willful position of submission, right? They're in a position, it says power, and this is the idea of the moon in Scorpio. And so here's the cool part. The power, it doesn't mean you are powerless. It's the opposite. You, through your submission, take power. One example of that would be men. Men are powerful. Men are strong, right? We can lift big things and we can shoot guns and we can fight wars. But the woman rules the house. The woman controls him through her sexuality, through her nurturing, through her caring. And so she's the boss. And so, interestingly, your power is in your ability to be submissive when necessary so that they can feel dominant, feel like the man, and that puts you in the position of control. And you can continue to play that because, again, they're in this constant state of ego. And if you fluff that up, guess what you're doing? You're giving them what they need to want you more. Like, wow, she gives me what I need. She makes me feel powerful. Now, don't fall into the trap of identifying with that to the degree that you give up your agency. He'll lose respect. You will resent him, and that won't last. There has to be a balance of give and take. And if he's open to that, you can have a pretty explosive, awesome thing here. If he's not, I see you kind of learning over time that his ego will overcome that and you'll begin to resent. So you have to stay strong in your commitment to there being an even give and take. Okay? So I'm going to be going here now, and I'll ask you before I do that, do you have a specific question about anything I talked about here before I go? If not, then I'm going to sign off. And again, I'll leave the reading up for... what happened here? How did this happen? Very strange. I'll leave the reading up for you to go back to and reference if you'd like. So any particular questions about anything I talked about that you want to review? Otherwise, I'm going to head out. And please do this for me, Shajini. If you find any value in what I'm doing, please like the video and please consider commenting. It costs nothing, and the reason you're looking at me right now is because a robot put you in front of me, and that robot reads the comments, right? And so it makes a huge difference to my channel being able to grow if you comment. But at least give it a thumb up. That'll make all the difference. And I really, really appreciate you popping in on the stream today. It was kind of an impromptu stream. I usually stream very late at night, and just decided today I had a little bit of time before a meeting, and so I thought, okay, well, let me jump on and just get some positive energy going, and sort of start the day feeling good. And I think I accomplished that. I don't know. I feel good. But yeah, and I put up videos every day. Whether I do a love reading, they're general. Don't do that. Don't lose your self-respect. Just recognize that we have our moments of weakness and move forward. We all do it. Yeah, now that we can do that's a different kind of. That's a little more involved when you start getting to. Old connect, like where did the connection start? When did it start? Is it super old? Is it kind of new? Has it been forever? Is it transient or not? Those are questions that could be answered, but not in the scope of like a quick little reading. Well, the future is going to depend upon the particular circumstance of how you apply that. Basically, the answer to the question of how the future will go here is, it depends upon the ratio of give and take, because you're willing to take this position to put him in, quote, power in his mind. Thank you so much. What we're looking at here is that if you begin to resent that, the future is not great for you two, and that you need to insist on there being a balance between what you give and what you take, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually with him. You really need there to be, and now it's never going to be even. That's silly. Like, we don't need the scale to look like this, but it should look like that, not that, right? Or like this, not that, right? Or, like you don't want it totally tipped. It should be a little bit off where you're giving more than him and then he's giving more than you, right? Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. And don't listen, I'm not going to think ill of you if you don't. And so that said, the real answer to that question is that there's some serious stuff going on here that's really good. You have a good mental connection with him. Physically, you can have a very good time together. Spiritually, you are playing the game of making him think he's in power but you're the one in control, and all that can be maintained. But you're the foundation there. Until if you find yourself in a position of starting to you're in this kind of position of starting to say, okay, well, I can guide this. It's gonna come down to how you play that ego card. He's got this, and so you have to kind of play to the ego in order to get him to open up right now. And in doing so, a lot of positive can come from that with respect to you two. The energy is there for it to happen. It just needs to be allowed to take place. And the way that's going to happen is by you stroking the ego. But now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's correct, because it is going to require you at least pretending to take a submissive position. And if that's what you want, and you're okay with that, and you understand that that's what it's going to take, you got to really be careful as you approach the situation with this person, because they are going to be in this egotistical state. And if they're not willing to meet you halfway for that balance, then you're going to get burnt out. And you have to consider, like, is it worth this transient relationship that I might wind up feeling more for than I expected? Or can I maturely treat it as a short, quick thing, have fun, move on? That's up to you. I'm not that type, I kind of don't really do well in those relationships. I tend to attach and suffer when it's over, and so I don't put myself in that position. But you can if you'd like. We all have that ability. Okay, but thank you so much. I appreciate you popping in. And so if you want any additional clarity on anything, you can give me a call or a text message. That is the US number. Or you can email or direct message as well. Comment on the video, and I will get back to you. I answer everybody. Okay, so thank you for popping in. I appreciate it. And, again, if you found any value, you can tell anyone that you feel would benefit as well. And thank you so much, okay? Well, he might react to that, Some people do react to that, and especially men in a position of power, or even if it's perceived power, feel, if you're not responding in the way they're expecting, they may respect you for that, right? That's a very common technique, okay? And it works. So, anyway, thank you so much. And anyone else who's seeing this after the stream, I do live stream once a day, and I post 3 videos a day, sometimes 4. I do a pet reading, if you have pets, a general love reading, and that is general. If you want specific, hit me up on a stream or on a direct message, and I do a general reading for everybody. Okay, so thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.